And there you go. So it's definitely not nothing. How much is it? Well, we'll find out. 6 volts, 3 watts is incorrect. First, a bit of a disclaimer. I actually design, manufacture and sell Dynamo-powered bicycle lights and chargers, as well as Bicycle Dynamos. So with that out of the way, there'll be chapter marks down below, as well. Any product that you see in this video, there will also be links there. So if you just came for the results from the title, you can definitely go find everything down in the description. But there's quite a bit of misconception about Bicycle Dynamos. So there's quite a bit of an introduction that I'm going to go over. So I would really appreciate if you actually take the time to watch it, because sometimes otherwise things might look a bit confusing and not really clear. So why did I decide to make this video? Well, I did not start manufacturing bicycle lights just like this. I had no idea about electronics or anything really. So like any sane person, a couple of years ago, well, 4 or 5 years ago, I went on the internet and decided to do some research, so basically see what I'm dealing with. And I found quite a bit of, now that I know is misinformation, but I found many claims that kept to be repeating without any real data. So I'm going to read you some of them. So number 1, Dynamo gives 6 volts only. Number 2, Dynamos are limited to 3 watts. Well, it says on the box, it says on the Dynamo, so it's got to be true. Also, there's the special version of the Dynamo, the SONdelux. It's much more efficient than other Dynamos, so it doesn't really slow you down. Also, Dynamo slow you down even if you have nothing connected, so just having it on your bike running is going to slow you down. Well, they don't really slow you down, they just slow you down when you have the lights, and not really that much, and there's quite some misinformation and bad science there with some botched up numbers without any real measurements, so I'm not going to cover any more of this. So again, the reason why I wanted to make this video. Or there's some total academic bench test. They said, well, they just told you by X amount of watts, and I'm like, since when do we measure speed and time in watts? So with this video I wanted to actually see if Dynamos actually slow you down, and address all the kind of myths there and see if they're going to be confirmed or busted. Why were dynamos invented and why do you need electricity on the bike? And back in the day when people didn't have cars so much, the bikes were quite of a transportation, they were basically quite utilitarian. And when you use your bike in all conditions and during the year, there's times when it will be dark and you need lights both for safety and to see, so others see you and you see where you're going. So one of the very first dynamos that are kind of really revolutionized this is the SONdelux Dyno Hub. They're the original Dyno Hub. There's others that have other dynamos like this one that run on your tire and all that. Nowadays it's largely hub dynamos that like this one that have taken over. Nowadays we still use the dynamos to run lights, but as ultra riding has exploded in popularity, and also we have supercomputers in our pockets like the phone. Our power needs have also increased, so we charge various devices including a phone, a bike computer, GPS, maybe even a camera on a long tour. And the strongest point for dynamos is that they're pretty much, it's a limitless power source because they're always there with you. You don't have to worry about batteries. Battery technology wasn't the same as it is now, back in the day when dynamos were first invented, but even so, dynamos are always there and you generate your own electricity, so you don't have to worry about charging batteries or anything like this, because from personal experience, being stuck in the middle of the night with no lights can be quite a scary experience without getting into that, it's quite unsafe, but it is quite scary personally. Because batteries will go bad on you and they do lose charge in cold and hot condition, and like I said, they will go bad on you in the worst opportune moment. So the dynamos are an easy way to generate electricity while you're riding, and obviously they don't do this out of thin air. So let's flip the camera, get on the bench, and I'll show you how they do this. So here I'm at my bench and I have 2 dynamos to show you. So that's a really old one, Union Motor Dynamo, made in Germany. I don't know if you can see it, but it says 6 volts 3 watts right there. Well, you can probably definitely see it there. So that's a SONdelux, Schmidt SONdelux, and you can see it 6 volts 3 watts right there. Says on the box, right? No problem there. So we're gonna get to that part, but first, how do dynamos work? And obviously, like I said, they spin like the hub spins as you're going. And how does it generate electricity? Well, this is a pretty old principle discovered by Michael Faraday. So you have a conductor going in a magnetic field. So in the case of this dynamo here, like the Schmidt, that's how it looks. So you have an axle and you have a magnet ring. So you have the axle with the claw poles, you have the copper coil inside, and you have alternating plus minus, and you know, they go together. Obviously now they're gonna snap like this, and they spin like, and as they spin they create a varying magnetic field, and they generate electricity. And first thing, it is quite tough to move. I mean, this is one of the light turning dynamos. It still takes quite some effort to move it, but we're gonna get to that part. So that's how it does. And you know, why do I have Schmidt parts here? Did I bust open an expensive hub? Well, I might have something working, a collaboration with them, so please subscribe. I'll talk more about it later in the video, but please subscribe. There'll be updates about it, so that's why I have parts. I mean, there are new parts. I did not bust the hub open. So let me put this away. And so an example that I'm going to give you, a lot of you are probably familiar that electric cars now have regenerative braking. So basically the electric motor acts like a dynamo, because an electric motor, you know, takes power to spin things, but it also works in reverse, basically as if you're moving it. The power that it creates causes drag, and this is why and this causes enough drag to stop a multi-ton vehicle. I mean, the TGV high-speed trains here in France use the same type of braking, regenerative braking. So this is multi-ton train going at 300 kilometers an hour can be stopped. So it definitely produces enough drag. But like I said, we're gonna get to the drag part in a little bit. And now we're gonna cover something else. But before that, I need to give you an example. So we talked that this is 6 volts, 3 watts right there, says it on the box. And made in Germany, right there. Does it say made in Germany? No, well, they usually do. And this is my phone charger, my phone. So it says 5 volts, 2 amperes. This is made in China. And one of those two does not do as advertised. And I'm pretty sure you know which one, or at least you think you know which one. And it is this one. The Dynamo, the made in Germany. The 6 volts, 3 watts is incorrect. And let me explain now that I have your attention. So dynamos are designed to do 6 volts when they're connected to a resistor. And what is a resistor? A resistor is one of these. So let me put this away. So when they're connected to a resistor, this one is 12 ohms sitting on a heatsink here. And why is that? Because back in the day, and you're gonna start laughing here, so let me take out, this is like an accessory box. Back in the day, lights used one of these incandescent bulbs, and this bulb pretty much acts like a 12 ohm resistor. So this is, it says it on it, 2.4 watts, 6 volts, and the real one is 0.6. So in total, when you do the math in Ohm's law, you get to 12 ohms. And why is that? Why are we talking about resistors and incandescent bulbs when now we use LEDs? That's where it gets interesting. So Germany is the only country that has any kind of regulation when it comes to what dynamos should do, and as a consequence what the lights should do when connected to said dynamo. And this is a bit going on a tangent here, but it's kind of like one-eyed person leading the blind. It's de facto the international regulation, even though if you're not in Germany you don't have to conform to this. There's local regulations, or in most cases there isn't anything. So Germans being Germans, they have their own regulation, and the world kind of follows it, even though it's dysfunctional regulations. You will see why. Again, like I mentioned, it's based on one of these. Probably I'm not that old, and I'm not old enough to know what this is because we have LEDs now. So basically the regulation says that one of these dynamo, when on a 28-inch wheel spinning at about 15 kilometers an hour, should give 6 volts and 3 watts into a 12 ohm load. Like I said, this is very well represented by one of these. And when it comes to regulation, most people are not aware that there is one, or they just don't want to upset the apple cart. I mean, it's already there, why bother changing it? And it's been worked for all these years. And again, all these years, this is more than 100-year-old technology, and we have supercomputers in our pocket, among other things. Why are we still using that? It is how it is. I mean, that's government bureaucracy for you. We are not gonna change it just like this. So with that tangent out of the way, I hear you use LED drivers and all that. Just to show you a couple of pictures. I mean, these are some of the LED drivers that I use in my electronics. I mean, LEDs are as the most opposite as it comes to this in terms of efficiency. I mean, LEDs are 30 times, yes, that is 3 with a 0, 30 times more efficient than incandescent bulbs. They're as opposite as they come, and basically these do not behave like any of that. But again, I think it's a case of government bureaucracy and not really having anything better. I mean, it is bad, but you know, why bother? It works good enough for what it is supposed to do. So like I said, I mean, you have your resistor or your bulb connected to this, and basically the dynamos, I kind of lied. They are 6 volts only in this condition. Like I said, 15 kilometers an hour and a 28-inch wheel going to either this one or for the test into a 12 ohm resistor. And just to give you an example, that pretty much every light that conforms to this reglementation has to follow the same curve. I'm going to post a graph of 3 lights from German manufacturers. So the SONdelux, which you're quite familiar with probably, if you're into engineering, the Müller and the Supernova. And as you can see, right around the 15 kilometer mark, they kind of diverge. They're almost the same. I mean, this is the standard. It has some tolerance, obviously, plus 20 and minus 10%, because coils are not precision devices. As you can see, most of them converge around that point. So number one is totally busted. Basically, dynamos, I think like 6 volts. Their voltage changes even when in the regulation, like I'm going to show you. Testing for the regulation with the 12 ohm resistors, they, as you can imagine, as you go slow, they're not spinning very hard, they don't produce nearly as much voltage, and then it kind of levels out, but it's still not 6 volts. So there you go. Dynamos are not 6 volt devices. So we busted the 6 volt part, but we're still left with the 3 watt. And are dynamos actually 3 watt? Are they more? Are they less? For that, I will have to show you some graphs and slides, so stay with me. So here we go, and this is the part that confuses a lot of people, and a bit of a small disclaimer that I have a very practical understanding of this, and I think this is what most of you are looking for. Because like any sane person, if you go on the internet today, you're going to get into all these discussions about inductance, reactance, and all that kind of stuff, which is probably what you should know if you're going to make your own dynamo. But for the practical point of view, the one thing that you need to understand, all power supplies like a dynamo, they respect Ohm's law, and I'm pretty sure I already lost the 2 out of the 3 people that are watching this. The Ohm's law is quite simple actually, and there's no really way around it, and all supplies kind of exist, power supplies exist in a spectrum between 2 extremes, like a short circuit and an open circuit. So the way it works, I mean, you have the little guy Ohm here, you know, he's kind of squeezing the electricity, and basically a short circuit is when this guy doesn't exist. Basically the tube is wide open, and then this guy can push as much as current is possible. And this is why anything connected to mains voltage, so the ones in your house, is very dangerous, because this part, the amps are kind of unlimited. Well, they're limited to what is the grid, or that's why you have fuses, because if a short circuit happens, basically this becomes unlimited. And this, since we're dealing with the whole electrical grid, this does not sag. But when it's a limited power supply like a dynamo, when this little guy here is not squeezing, in practice you get the maximum amp, but the volts drop. Basically in French they say you go faster than the music, so this guy cannot keep up, so the voltage would drop. And in the other end, when the thing is basically switched off or an open circuit, this guy is theoretically squeezing a lot. So there's no current flowing, and voltage, since kind of like a pressure, you know, it goes up. Obviously, like I mentioned, the power supplies exist in a spectrum between this. So if this squeezes a bit harder, like medium hard, then you know the voltage is higher than if it squeezes a bit less. So obviously we're talking about squeeze and we're talking about dynamos, so let me show you what I mean. So here we have the graph, and this is I replotted from another website compared to different loads, and this is what, you know, a lot of people get confused, and they're like, oh my god, what are you talking about? So basically different resistor values. In red is the famous or infamous 12 ohm resistor, which I mentioned, which is based on incandescent bulbs. So this is red, but if you put how much you squeeze the dynamo, and of course dynamos spin because, you know, the faster you go. So as you see exactly what happens, the more you squeeze, you know, higher ohms, the more pressure you get. So the higher voltage, but the current becomes less. So you have the current here, and again in red is the red one is the regulation, so 12. And this is a part of the reason why if you run an STV0 light, like a light that's designed to meet regulation, you cannot charge and run the lights at the same time. I mean, I make something which you can, but it still requires a buffer, because pretty much you're taking the maximum what Dynamo can, and Dynamo is made like this because of regulation, and lights are made because of this, because of the Dynamo regulation. It's kind of like a chicken egg type question, or a catch-22, or a snake eating its own tail. So as you can see, just like I mentioned, the more you squeeze, the higher voltage before, like the thing, and the less current you can do. Basically, this guy is squeezing more. And obviously Ohm's law, volts times amperes equals to power. So here we go. And in that, again, we have our light. And like I mentioned, it is supposed to give you 6 volts and about the maximum current, so half an amp. So it gives about 3 watts there. But even in regulation, like the thick red line, as you can see, it gives a lot more, or not a lot more, but significantly more than 3 watts, just like this. And depending on the load, like what is connected to this type of resistor, you get more power, and you can get almost 8 watts going at 40 kilometers an hour. Again, if you have, this is a bit of the limit, and if you have something that's designed to meet the regulation, you're kind of always on the edge, if I can say, on the maximum what a Dynamo can give you. But the kicker here is that most modern electronics, actually pretty much all electronics, do not not represented by a resistor. The only thing that is purely resistive is a resistor, or in the case of bicycle lights is the halogen bulb. Pretty much everything else acts much differently. But electronics can exist on this scale, so anything from a short circuit to an open circuit to no load. Basically, dynamos are not 3 watts at all. Well, they are 3 watts just at regulation. Like I said, even at regulation, it's slightly faster at 20 kilometers an hour. You get almost 3.2 watts, which is 10% more. And like I said, regulation is plus 20 minus 10. So if you're in the top end, so if at 15 you're plus 20%, here you're going to be even more. And so that's why dynamos are not really 3 watts, and they can give you a lot more. I mean, this is just dynamo with nothing else. There's a couple of tricks to actually shift this curve, shift it like that way, like 1 square that way, so you get like 5 watts starting 15 kilometers now, etc. But I'm not gonna cover this. This is just to show you that dynamos are actually not 3 watts at all, even when they're supposed to be 3 watts. In the 3 watts only at 15 kilometers an hour. And this is why you have devices nowadays, including the ones I make, can give you 5 watts, but what you reliably can get out of a dynamo, because 40 kilometers an hour is quite some speed, what you reliably can get is between 3 and 6 watts. This is what, you know, most people with luggage, or the people who would use a dynamo, can sustain. Like I said, there are some tricks, but you cannot squeeze more out of this. Basically, this is limited by the coils, the strength of the magnets, the magnetic fields. There's a whole bunch of things that it's beyond the scope of my understanding, but this is theoretical, academic. The practical thing is that dynamos can definitely give you a lot more. It's just you need to present the correct load, and like I mentioned, this is purely resistive. Most electronics, even the LED drivers that I showed you earlier, still exist in that spectrum, but they do not fit like where they should if you do a purely resistive calculation. So we are getting closer now that we disproved the myth that dynamos are not 3 watts. We are getting closer to, do they actually slow you down? What does that mean? Because if you hold a dynamo in your hand, obviously this is the SONdelux, which has one of its selling points, efficient, but you still feel it quite notchy in your hand. And this is probably people think, well, it's notchy, so it must be slowing me down, kind of like lightning comes from the sky, God hates us all. But this is irrelevant. So before we get into any kind of calculations and any kind of drag, we need to talk about efficiency. Basically, dynamos convert mechanical electromagnetical into electrical, and it's not there's nothing 100% efficient in the real world. So in this case, I've plotted efficiency of various dynamos. The original data is done by Olaf Schultz. I'll post the link below. I just replotted it for clarity here. And what you have to understand that dynamos are about 40 to 60% efficient. It depends on the speed and depends on the model dynamo. So here I have the SON28 Classic, which is the hub that I'll be using for the test here. That's what I have. SON28 New is the dynamo you can buy now. SONdelux is the one that is marketed as more efficient and more free running. This is the one that I held in my hand right here that I have as a hub. This is a Shutter Precision PV8. I posted this here because DT Swiss just released the Dynamo wheel set, and the electrical bits are based on this, the mechanical bits are DT Swiss, so just to give you a reference point. And in black is Project X. I mentioned this a bit before in the video, but this is something I've been working in collaboration with Schmidt. So of course, let's see what happens. Subscribe to this channel. I'll definitely be posting any progress or lack of it on this channel. So with that being said, let's look at the graphs. And in this case, what you need to understand, higher is better, higher efficiency. Just to give you something to illustrate, it's an easy number to calculate. If you are pulling 10 outs electrical and at 50% efficiency, you're totally requiring 20 watts mechanical. And dynamos are a bit more efficient than this. So in blue, the one that I'll be using for this test starts at about 67 and it drops to about 38. I mean, all dynamos do that at higher speeds. And in orange, you have the SON28 New at 63. Then you have the SONdelux. As you can see, it's quite efficient across the board. And of course, Project X, which is more efficient than anything. But you have to understand that dynamos are not 100% efficient. So this is actually what potentially slows you down. With that out of the way, let's go to my setup and the tests. Well, as you saw from the graphs, one way to get more power, which seems logical, is just go faster, so this spins faster. This is not so easy to do because, well, you need a lot more power or fitness or that kind of stuff. So one way to actually tune it and to cheat it is to put the dynamo into a smaller wheel, because a smaller wheel spins faster for the same speed. And actually there are dynamos that exist for small wheels, have less coils and less copper, they have less of an output when put into a bigger wheel. The reverse is also true. It won't give you 3 watts like I showed you on the graph there. But there's this bit of a unicorn, if I want to say it, is this what I have here, is the SONdelux Dynamo. And there's been a lot of internet knowledge, I'm saying internet knowledge. It's basically Schmidt took a 20-inch dynamo, put it into a 28-inch wheel and called it good because, it's cheaper to produce, less copper, etc, etc. It's a 2.4 watt dynamo, not 3. Why do you bother using it? It still costs the same, it weighs almost the same, it's a bit lighter for sure. It does feel a bit lighter in your hand, and does that matter? I will show you later. So a lot of the knowledge is like, why does this exist? This needs some addressing, so let's flip to some slides and I'll show you what I mean. Here we go. This is the official data from Schmidt, the people who make the dynamo. And in orange you see the SONdelux, and in red you see the SON28, which is the classic dynamo. And of course right here you see the infamous, or I should say 6 volts. Even now at 15 kilometers an hour, the SON28 barely touches this, and SONdelux is even lower. And the curve actually kind of efficiency between the two dynamos is here. Of course, I've reported this. The official data is down below in the links, and as you can see, in blue is the SON28, and in orange is the SONdelux, and it is quite more efficient. This is again how much power out comes out and how much power goes in to keep it spinning. So it's quite more efficient. Obviously, what you care is the actual output, how much it powers your lights, and this is where a bit of the misunderstanding comes, I think. As you can see, the SONdelux in orange actually between 10 and 20 kilometers an hour. Like I mentioned, the test is done at 15 kilometers an hour, so right in between here. Produces slightly less power than the SON28, so I think that's why a lot of people got confused, because as you can see here, it says it's approved with the Edelux LED headlight. It meets the light specifications, like the light distribution and all that, but it does not meet the electrical. And as you can see, actually, as you speed up about 20 kilometers, it becomes even more powerful than the SON28. And I think it's just this part that confuses people a lot. It's slightly less powerful, but in general it is more powerful and it is more efficient. So if you have the total drag, I mean how much it slows you, because one of the biggest selling points, at least the marketing points of the SONdelux, is that it slows you down less. And actually if you hold it in your hand compared to other dynamos, it spins quite freely. It's still quite some drag compared to a regular hub, but it spins much better. And as you can see, in pretty much everything it is better than the SON28. First of all, good job Schmidt. And why don't they just sell this separately? And I think is the regulation, because this dynamo kind of meets the regulation with a bit of a asterisk because of this part here, but overall it is much better Dynamo. Obviously the difference is not huge, and this is how much you can change government regulation. Your example of how government regulations change, and they change glacially slow, but it is still something. And this, I'm pretty sure you can definitely measure. Is lighter and it costs the same, so might as well. So now we kind of get into the heart of this video and how much do dynamos actually slow you down. Like I already showed you at the very beginning of this video, if you connect something, the wheel definitely slows down, so it is not nothing. But if you look on the internet, they either say, well, it slows you down quite a bit, you can feel it, or no, it's not too bad, it's fine. But there is nobody has really tested it. Again, there's been some bench tests that measure watts, but I mean, since when do we measure seconds and distance traveled by watts? Got me thinking how I can do this actually. And the way is stationary trainer, or in this case rollers. What are rollers? I mean, I ride on rollers. I mean, most of my indoor training. Before that, I had a stationary trainer, but I bought rollers from the company Kreitler, again, not sponsored, to do my indoor or sometimes outdoor training, even when it's really bad weather. I just have half an hour. Not very popular because they require some skill. I mean, if you can ride a bike, you can probably ride rollers, but require some skill. They're not so popular. But you're stationary and kind of you can measure distance traveled with one of those speed sensors. And it got me thinking, I already have a power meter on the bike, so if I keep the power output the same, and I have the dynamo on or off, and I have a counter to measure how much distance I go, well, that sounds like a pretty valid way. So this is what I went out and did, and a bit of a background about the rollers. There's two things that matter when it comes to rollers. First of all, the drum size, the actual roller size matter. They have a 4.5, 3 and 2.25 inch drums. I have the 3 inch, which are in the middle. And the smaller, the more resistance. And the way rollers work, actually, the faster you spin, the more resistance you get. So this is part 1, and it's not separate from part 2. I'm going to pause the chart, just to see. This is done by Kreitler. If you keep everything the same, how the resistance changes. The part 2 is tire pressure is absolutely critical. How to ride on rollers, and as a consequence, the way your tire profile, basically a wider rim, the tires looks different. This is important when I get to my setup. Basically, this dynamo that you see here, I had it left over, and I had the same. I'm using the same rim as that I'm using with normal hubs on my other bike. So that way, if I use the same tire, same pressure, same rim, the results should be interchangeable. So my idea was to ride at 150 watts with the dynamo, with nothing on, like just the cable, like not even the cable connected to it. And then I'm going to connect the resistor, the 12 ohm resistor. And if you have an STV0 light, it is designed to act like one of these, so you can definitely transfer the results to something that you have. So I'm going to ride at 150 watts, which is a pretty decent cruising power. I'm saying cruising, not racing. So at 150 watts, I have a stages power meter on my bike, and I'm going to try to keep it as steady as possible. So 10 minutes, each run 2 times, so I make sure that it's not a freak accident. So 2 times 10 minutes without anything connected, 2 times 10 minutes with the resistor, and then as a bonus I'm gonna put the original wheel on the bike, because this I built just for testing. So same rim, same tire, same pressure, like I mentioned, this matters. With a regular hub to actually see if a dynamo has any difference from the hub. And in this setup, pretty much all variables like rolling resistance of the tire, etc., they kind of cancel out. So I went out and did it. So real quickly to show you what I mean about resistance when you have a load. So right now I'm setting up to go outside, and as you can see right now it's not connected to my 12 ohm resistor. I'm going to spin the wheel, and as you can see it spins quite freely. So now I'm going to connect the resistor, and as you can see the wheel slows down. So now it has the resistor connected. You can see it slows down. I'm going to disconnect it. Spins quite freely. Now I'm going to connect it again. Oh, and there you go. So it's definitely not nothing. How much is it? Well, we'll find out. That's the setup for today. My Kreitler rollers, 3-inch drums with extended frame. My Randonneur bike right there. SON 28 Classic Dynamo. Cable runs all the way here. Then goes inside the front bag. And there's my 12 ohm resistor. And it's connected with the SON coaxial system here. So I'm gonna connect or disconnect it so I make sure. There you go. So I'm going to do 2 runs of 10 minutes with it connected and 2 runs disconnected. And here's the speed sensor. And this speed sensor right there to measure the distance traveled and any difference between the two setups. And the rear tire, 110 psi, Schwalbe Durano 25mm, and the front one is a Continental Grand Prix 4000, I think, also at 110 psi. Like I mentioned, this is important. And as a bonus, I'm going to swap tires between the original wheel, so same rim. Shouldn't affect the measurements that much, but I'm going to swap tires, put them on the original wheel right there, and I'm going to compare Dynamo with nothing on, compared to a regular hub if it has any resistance. So this is the part most of you have been waiting for. If you just scrolled into here, if something seems unclear, please watch the introduction, because there's quite a bit of background that requires if you don't understand. But if you're just looking at the data, here we go. So Dynamo with no load versus regular hub. So there's nothing connected to Dynamo as a regular hub. I used a Quiskin Classic. It's a hub I've been riding for a very long time. And it's quite broken in. It's adjusted. Same rim, same tire, same pressure, because this is important, like I mentioned in the setup. So here we go. As you can see on the left, you have the Quiskin Classic hub. So I did 2 runs at 150 watts for 10 minutes, and this is the 2 average. I'll post the raw data somewhere. I'll see how to do it, but more or less I got pretty much the same number. I should have posted the standard deviation, but it was pretty consistent. So the difference between the SON28 and the Quiskin Classic hub was 3 meters, over almost 4 kilometers ridden on the rollers. So myth number 4, I think we're up to now, is totally busted, basically at the same power output. A regular hub does not run faster than a SON28, and a bit of an asterisk here. I know what you're thinking, yeah, but I have ceramic bearing, etc, etc. I mean, you're not Carlos Sastre at the final time trial of the Tour de France, where they remove the seals of the hub, because actually in hubs is what you feel is seal drag, and Quiskins are kind of famous for this. That's why they last so long, that's why they run so well over many years, and you're feeling seal drag and the grease, and even regular hubs have a bit of drag, but Dynamo does not have that kind of drag. And if you're thinking or looking into Dynamos, you will not be running any of those ceramic hubs that basically die the first time you ride them in the rain. So bit of a disclaimer here. So Dynamos do not slow you down at all. I mean, you can call this 3 meters, but for the purpose of this demonstration, resolution and of my testing, it was definitely not even a question here. And now we get to the really interesting part with lights on, or in this case a 12 ohm resistor, because like I mentioned, a light is designed to act like this. Why? Again, look at the introduction. Versus lights off, and I just disconnected the cable like I showed you in the setup. And here we go. This is the data. So on the left 2 columns are the ones from the previous results. So Quiskin Classic hub, or pretty much any regular hub I would assume, versus SON28 nothing connected, and the SON28 to a 12 ohm. And there's a difference of more than 300 meters, or more than 10%. Is it 10%? Well, doesn't matter the numbers, and as you can see, and it was quite consistent. Again, I'll post the actual numbers that I measured. I don't know, Strava or something. But as you can see, a Dynamo definitely slows you down, and I could feel it. I mean, it wasn't a totally blind test, but when I was doing the tests here, I could switch a gear higher, and actually I had to hold myself back. Like I said, rollers, the faster you spin, the more power you produce. So actually I had to hold myself back to keep it at 150, while here, and I was getting a bit of vibrations with the Dynamo. Again, this is a bike that's with rim brakes and has a very flexible fork, so this matters, but definitely it slows you down. And from the top of my head, I'm gonna look at the results. If I'm talking here, it was about 23 kilometers average, and here it was 21.9. So what does that mean in numbers? So it is about 3 minutes over 1 hour of riding slower if you have the lights on. Like if you have German approved STV0 lights, which are in this case represented by the 12 ohm resistors. Again, if this is a bit Chinese to you, go back, you see why. In this case, so the light was about 3.2 watts, or the resistance, the electrical power, and the SON28 Classic Dynamo, like I showed before, is about 57% efficient in the 15 or the 20 to 30 kilometer range where I rode. So it was about 5.6 watt of total electrical and mechanical, so you're losing about 32 seconds per total watts per hour. And I know what you're thinking, so if you have a more efficient Dynamo like the SONdelux, you'll be losing about 28 seconds. So it is theoretical. Again, I haven't measured it, like I only have the SONdelux as a hub. I'll eventually put it in a wheel, but I mean the data's there, so it should correlate like this. And like I said, Project X Dynamo I've been working on with Schmidt is even better than the SONdelux. So a bit into more practical terms, I mean lights when it comes to this ultra distance riding, or in my case randonneuring or Paris-Brest Paris. If you're very fast, you will ride at least 2 nights in Paris-Brest. If you're like the most people, like you do it like me for 80 something hours, you ride 3 nights, but overall you lose about 24 minutes over an 8-hour night. I mean, it's August, so days are a bit longer, but still, let's for the purpose of this calculation, you will lose about 24 minutes with having the lights on, or at least 48 minutes during a Paris-Brest Paris, and the SONdelux would save you additional minute over the 24, and a Project X would save you about 2.5, so over a Paris-Brest, anything from 5 to 7.5 minutes. Dynamos do slow you down, it's measurable. Whether it's significant, I mean, I'm going to talk about this with a personal story in a bit. And different dynamos have efficiency, but you cannot get below this efficiency if you're still running STVZO approved lights. So there's better way to do it. And again, this is my channel, so I'm going to push my stuff a bit. So doing it better, what you see here is the companion. It is a light that I make. Actually, this is how I got into this whole dynamo thing. Since LED is one of the biggest features that you can dim them, and by dimming them they basically consume less power. So this is what actually took me a good part of 4 years to figure out how to do without, like I showed you, again, if this doesn't mean anything to you, like I showed you, when dynamos don't receive the correct load, they do weird things that split semiconductors wide open. Basically it fries things. And so this is my light. It has 3 modes. And it has a low mode in blue here, and in medium in orange, and high. High is like really high. And how you can get such high power out of a 3-watt dynamo. Again, if you just got in here, go look backwards and you see how you can do it. And I've put some other lights you might find that you might use, and I'm using the SONdelux 2 as an example here, but pretty much any German light, again, like I showed you previously in the video, so would fit on that line here, I mean in gray. So basically, if you use my light, the companion, this is one of its features. It is the world's first and only currently dimmable dynamo headlight. It has 2 low power modes. I mean, in full power it's very bright, but it has a 1.5 and 2.4 watt modes, and it would slow you down anywhere between 14 and 24 seconds. So if you're at the low power, also 1.5, it would slow you 14 seconds compared to the 32. So it is quite significant. Again, you might say, is that enough light? With LEDs? LEDs now 2024, they're quite efficient, they're quite bright. So I want to say, if you're really looking to save something and you need lights, this is it. But even in the medium mode, which is quite comparable and even brighter than a German light like the SONdelux, or pretty much anything designed to meet that regulation, it's still a bit faster, and this is based on the SON 28 Dynamo. So if you run something like the SONdelux or the Project X, comes into a commercial product, and on top of that you have USB charging, so you can have your cake and eat it. Again, this is doing it better. Like Einstein said, you cannot solve the problem with the same thing that created it. So if you're banging square pegs into round holes with regulation, won't be able to. So this is the way to make things better, and this is one of the features of the companion that I'm particularly proud of, that actually makes a significant difference. And after watching all of this, we come to the conclusion, and like Abraham Lincoln once said, do not believe everything you read on the internet. And I hope with this video and the data I showed you that pretty much everything that the internet and the internet experts tell you about dynamos is wrong. And most importantly, dynamos are not 6 volts, they're not 3 watts, they definitely don't slow you down when they have nothing on, but they do slow you down, and it is measurable when they're on. And the question now is, obviously, does it matter? Does it matter to you? And I'm going to give you a personal story here. So it was 2019, and the bike that you saw for the tests actually is a bike that I had to prepare for the 2019 Concorde machine, and then I had to ride it at the 2019 Paris-Brest Paris. And Paris-Brest Paris is a 1200 kilometer event. It happens every 4 years. It's actually older than the Tour de France, so Paris, Brest and back. And there's a time limit, 90 hours. There's also a faster one. Point being, you also have to qualify, because I don't just let anyone do this. You have to do 2, 3, 4 and 600 kilometer events. And I've never done this before, so the year before that, it was kind of like a big project, this bike and the Concorde machine, so I did all these events. I got into cycle touring or randonneuring, And this is how the bike looked at the beginning. I had to present it at the jury. I have not slept for 2 weeks. I was really depressed. I was crying, and my neighbor got me out in my sleep deprived state, got me to the registration, said, "You've already done everything, even though you don't have a bike, you have a bike. Go get your ass to, go get your number, go get your number plate, go, you're doing pre-best pre." So, you know, what do I know? He dragged me there. I was gonna ride pre-best on my road bike, because, and the bike that was designed for pre-best pre, one of the requirements was to have independence, and so I had a Dynamo, not a Hub Dynamo like I showed you, but I had a Dynamo, so I could run lights pretty much all the time. And my road bike, like most road bikes, did not have lights, so I had this. This is a Supernova Airstream, one of the very first models. I bought it in 2007, so about 17 years. And it is quite a nice light, but it is battery powered. I mean, it meets the German regulation. It has different modes, so I think it's anywhere between 14 and 2.5 hours, depending on intensity. And again, I've never done pre-best pre, like the data I showed you. I mean, I knew I had to. I've ridden overnight, but I haven't ridden over multiple nights and all that. And I was like, how bad it can be? I took the charger for this, of course, but again, I had no way to charge it on the bike. And in pre-best, you have controls. So you have these villages where, you know, you can stop, you can eat, you can sleep, and they have power. So I didn't know that, but, you know, in my sleep deprived state, I said, well, how bad can it be? I mean, I've used this before overnight. So I got going, and that's where the problem started. It might sound like I'm giving Supernova shit, but they kind of deserve it. So it was very, very cold in the 2019. Anybody who rode it can attest to that. So I'm pretty sure I charged this at 100%, but after the first night, because it was very cold, and when it's cold, batteries do funny things, they lose charge, and these lights started acting very, very weird. Night one. I mean, I still had probably more than 900 kilometers to go. And it would get so cold, I had to take my gloves off, I had to hold it to keep it warm, because it would start resetting. Basically, when you turn it on, it goes into full power, but since it doesn't have battery, it goes into some weird mode, so you cannot control it, you cannot put it on low, etc, etc. And a second thing, again, even nowadays, so again, they deserve this negative criticism, even nowadays, this light charges for about 5 to 6 hours, so pretty much you need to charge it overnight, which is a bit of an embarrassment, because most things we have today, like a phone, etc., without getting into fast charging, in 2 hours you're on your way, and they have bigger batteries than this. So I had the charger, and pretty much, I told you, like, the night was cold, and it will start doing weird things in the middle of the night. And if you don't have lights, there's umpires and etc. First of all, it's unsafe. Other people will tell you, pull to the side of the road, and it was really freaking me out. I mean, add that the sleep deprivation I had, on top of the sleep deprivation that you get during the event. And again, I've never done anything that long. I've done 600 kilometers, which is only an overnighter, and the amount of stress was ridiculous. I mean, like, I didn't know that how long this charged, but again, I would give it at the controls. People are very nice. I've given the charger, and, you know, I would try to sleep for, or pretend to do something for 3 hours, because, you know, you can't really sleep. But even in 3 hours, you know, I think it would be charged, and I would start, and it would again start showing me the low battery warning. Again, it was cold, it would start doing funky things. And like I'm mentioning, the important part here is the hours. Like Dynamos I showed you, they slow you down minutes. I mean, you can get to about an hour, you know, over 3 pre-best nights. But I'm talking hours. Like pretty much every time I had to stop, I had to charge it a little bit. I mean, some people do pre-best differently. They sleep. I mean, if you're really fast, they sleep a full night, etc. But even with a full night, this would not have been enough. I took a power bank. I know what you're thinking, and I didn't know much about power banks, so I took this thing where you have 4 regular batteries that gives you 5 volts. That didn't work. Again, my fault, because I never ride new things, untested things on race day. Kind of my fault, but again, the amount of stress and all this on top of the toughness of the events, and this is, you know, when you get tired, like in your head, this is one of the toughest thing about ultra distance, is like it's your head that gives up, not your body. And I cried many times, not because of this, but this not working certainly added to this. Like me, I'm a big guy, like 2 meters, I cried like a little girl, because of all the fatigue and all that, and the amount of stress that this added. A battery light was probably immeasurable. So having a Dynamo would have eliminated all of this, and this is what I had in the 2023. I mean, I had one of these. Actually, I had a SON28. So now knowing this, I should have had a SONdelux, but that's another story. Again, look at the video. And second personal story, probably one of the scariest times on the bike, and I'm talking with someone who has 14 screws and 2 plates in my arm, and I have fallen while racing at 50 kilometers an hour one of the scariest moments on the bike. I had my road bike again. You see a pattern here, so no dynamo, no nothing. I didn't even have these. I was visiting my parents and I was doing a ride after work. And I guess there was wind or something, so it took me quite some time on the way back, and I got caught after dark, and it was this 2-lane road with no shoulder in evening rush hour traffic. I had no lights, nothing reflective. I remember it to this day. It still gives me a bit of goosebumps how scared I was. So even if I had batteries, there's always the possibility that, the batteries were dead. And like I said, Murphy's is low. If they will go bad on you, they will in the worst possible moment. So if I had a dynamo with lights, like I showed you, they don't slow you down. Like on the way out, I wouldn't have needed them. On the way back, just flip a switch would have made all the difference in the world. I had my road bike shoes. There was no shoulder. It was this like really busy road. I couldn't really walk. It was very, very scary. So from personal experience, dynamos are worth it. Even if you ever use them, just keep them as a backup. They're totally worth it. And here we get to my other point. Like I said, most dynamos are 3 watts because of regulations, but in my opinion, they have kind of outlived their usefulness. If you just run lights, and all that, this is fine, but now we require bigger, more power, like we have higher power needs on the bike. GPSs, bike computers, phones, and all that, cameras on long tours. So the 3-watt dynamo has kind of outlived this. So again, I've talked about Project X and all this, so please subscribe and see where that goes, because especially lithium-ion batteries, like this light has one of these inside, and it's most important the charging technology. Like I said, the charging part of this was the problem. So with the charging technology, the simple charger, the one I showed you during the video, how you can charge things and the capacity you can get into power banks, it can probably get you out of a jam, but dynamos are still, for what they do, and even for the probably increased price, they're simply worth their weight in gold. Again, this is my opinion. I do make and sell dynamo lights and dynamos, so I have a bit of a conflict of interest, but I gave it 2 personal stories, and I'm sure most of you probably can relate to this, because if you had batteries, they have always gone bad, and especially if you're using your bike every day, like day in, day out, the reliability of a dynamo hub is simply, you cannot quantify that. So with that being said, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for bearing up with me for, I don't know, 30-40 minutes that this comes up to. Like, share this with your friends, and if you have any questions, if I missed anything, please put a comment below and I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you.